We were addressed at our conference by a member of the United Methodist Church. There has been much progress made in that church. It's not as far as it needs to go. And the next speaker I'm going to bring to you knows that. He presented to us the major steps that the United Methodist Church did bring forward, and he agrees that it needs to go further. Agrees so much that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but he intends to write a book to tell us why the registry is wrong and why it needs to stop, and the challenge of the faith community to make it stop, to let people back into their lives. Dr. James Powell.
Thank you, Kelly. As a minister, I face a dilemma. I face the dilemma of being a pastor that provides an opportunity of people coming together in a safe place and giving praise to God, worshiping together, of centering their lives, of discovering how their identity can merge with biblical values, and that they can live more abundantly, live more successfully. If that is good for all people, and the Scriptures say it's good for all people, then that means it's good for people who have been incarcerated. The beginning of my particular denomination started with ministry to the incarcerated and to people working in coal mines. John Wesley, as a young Episcopal priest, went out and went to the coal mines and witnessed to the miners as they walked out of the mines at the end of their shift. He went into the prisons and talked with prisoners. He gave them new hope that no matter what their crime was, that there was still purpose for their lives. Because of that, he got in trouble with the Episcopal Church, and eventually the Episcopal Church would no longer provide communion to people in his holy groups in the New World, and a new denomination started. The Methodist Church has always been involved with ministry to people in special needs. Sex offenders are clearly one group of those people who have special needs, but to a local congregation, that can be scary. You're going to let a former child molester into our church. You're going to let somebody who looked at kitty porn into our church. You're going to let whatever the crime was. But the answer is yes. Do we take seriously that the church is not our church, but God's church? Then we've got a responsibility to minister to all people. And there are ways to do that safeguard congregations and provide opportunities for people with registry status. The number of the church insurance groups have provided guidelines. The United Methodist Church has provided guidelines, and I'm sure that many other denominations have. I know individual churches have, because I've consulted with them and helped them set up guidelines so that the sex offenders of their church can worship and not violate probation if they're still on probation, and every person in the church can be safeguarded. There's some states that still wrestle with that. New Hampshire is currently dealing with that in a court case. North Carolina dealt with that earlier this year with a ruling that the state has no right, it's unconstitutional, to prohibit someone from worshiping in a church that's willing to have that person worship with them. So we know that it's something that still has controversy. There's still some fear related to it, but it can happen. It can happen because it ought to happen, because sex offenders have not committed, from a Christian standpoint, the unpardonable sin, which is the failure to ask for forgiveness. As Dr. Leone has just shown, the people who are sex offenders are less likely to commit the next crimes. We need to be scientific about this. The other part of my life is I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist. And as a therapist, I treat not only victims of sexual abuse, I treat perpetrators. I treat people who've done sexual crimes, and I know that they can get better. The scientific data is clear. In the largest study ever done, which was in Canada, of 26,000 sex offenders, 26,000, they had a 92% non-recidivism rate. In Atlanta, Georgia, where I live, Dr. Gene Abels, who's one of the world's leading authorities on pedophilia, has a 94% success rate with people who complete his treatment program. So this is far from being an incurable disease. It's one that people who have committed something need to be cautious about the rest of their lives, but they can be safe in society. That is the scientific data, and we're not honoring that. But from a religious standpoint, it becomes a sin on our part that we're simply proud that that's not us, when the data says these are not the people that are the most frightening in our society, and we may be adding to the problem by failing to allow them to worship with us, instead of opening our churches, opening our hearts with due safeguards so that they can be part of a worshiping, caring, loving community. Thank you.